Well, this is a continuation of this gusseted corner box that I did the tutorial with to develop the 3D file and to derive the die line and to confirm its functionality within the 3D program. So I printed that out and it worked. And you can see that in another tutorial. I have one where I cut the box out and then demonstrated the functionality in an actual mock-up. So if you remember, this is the die line. I think I made one change from last time. If you remember, I had a straight line at the top of this triangle in the corner. And that's the actual surface that integrated with the bottle and supported the bottle. And it did go into the bottle geometry a little bit. So when I made it, it was a little bit too much. It was forcing itself around there and it didn't close as well. So I just put this negative curve cut in all those corners. I didn't make it so functional looking. I wanted to maintain this nice flowing curvilinear die cut outline. So for the unboxing experience, it just sort of looks great and works well, but it still maintains that functionality that squeezes the bottle and supports it during the DTC shipping. So here are just some photographs of the mock-up. Like I said, I have a tutorial on cutting this mock-up out and see to show how it works. So here's the assembled box with the outer sleeve. I have the die line of the outer sleeve also, so we can talk about that. So just a quick little Photoshop thing of what a label might look like. There'd be some kind of a sealing label perhaps that goes on that to keep that contained. Because once that's held down in position, everything stays nice and firm. And just demonstrating that it will accommodate a shipping label. And then there it is, it's open position. So just by slipping off that top, these things sort of pop out and you have this kind of grand display. And that's the actual bottle in there that we had dummied up in the 3D file. So just different orientations. We can see how all those gusset corners come in. So by making those little triangles just have that negative curve in the corner, it's a very forgiving structure, which means you don't have to put the bottle in there in any particular orientation. It's very flexible. And since this bottle is oval in cross-section from the top view, if you don't get it perfectly lined up, it's okay. It will still close because these little corner gussets are a little bit forgiving. So by not having specific notches and allowing that to flex, it actually pulls the box in nice and tight and holds that. And then as I was playing with this, I discovered that this accommodates lots of different kinds of bottles. I put some round bottles in here. Some are a little bit taller and some a little bit shorter, 750 ml. And it accommodates them also. So it's a very scalable structure, which I did not anticipate doing. I was going to make it very specific for this bottle. But by keeping this die line structure very open like that, it becomes scalable. So that's kind of interesting in its own right. And then there's no additional materials or boxes in the bottom. This is E-flute, so that's a very thin bottom. The glass bottle is sitting right on the deck there. So I could see maybe during a test, we might want a little bit more padding down there on the bottom. We have great protection around the body and up into the lid. But down there, I could see maybe laminating a piece of C-flute or even another piece of E or something down there just to give it a little bit of protection on the bottom. That's kind of a decision we'd have to make after doing some tests, but it would still keep it very simple and very clean. So as it folds out, there's the whole die line. And then here's this picture of what it looks like inside when this is completely folded up. You can see we have all this triangulation. Triangulation is great for structure. Anytime you can work out a triangulated fold area, those are very strong. I mean, that's how bridges are made, not just right angles. You put in diagonals and triangulation, you get a lot of strength. So that's actually functionally works really well. Again, there's that combination of functionality and beauty all at the same time. It looks really nice when it opens, but it's structurally very sound. So the lid component, this is a little more straightforward. The actual outer configuration of the box is identical to the base. It's just a little bit bigger, so it fits over. But it's the same, height dimensions, and it's got the same curve cuts. But it's made like a tube. This is more of a traditional box structure. You can see the glue flap in here. So this is a tube structure with an open bottom. And then I've integrated this insert, which folds out of the same part and goes in and creates the whole area, which holds the top of the box. And then I have a tuck tab on here to hold it together. Probably for this situation, it would probably be glued closed because we don't want the consumer to open the top here by putting these little tuck tabs in there. If the consumer doesn't realize that this is a slip cover, they might start opening it from the top and just pulling the bottle out, and they kind of miss the entire experience altogether. And I've had packages that do that, so it's kind of funny. So here it is, pushing the top, and we can see how it seals in, and then that's what it looks like inside of that structure. Another little feature is the lid can be put in the bottom. So maybe, if this is used at a retail situation or something like that, these two could fit inside one another, and we could have a really bold graphic presentation on the outside, which would be quite more dramatic at retail in a situation. So it could function as a display box at retail. It's not the main feature, but it's just a little added feature that we could work with. So let's go back to the 3D file. So I just want to show here about the whole dimensioning thing. I know I've done this several times. I just want to emphasize this again. And I know I've said this many times. At the end of the day, when you're doing a die line in a box structure like this, the most important document is the die line with dimensions. That is everything about the structure. I mean, the renderings are good and all the mock-ups and everything are fine, but it's this dimension die line. It's like a legal document. It is what people sign off on. It's what vendors need to know so they can do estimates. So that's why it's very important that this be done accurately. I know I keep showing the same thing over and over again. It doesn't have a lot of character. If we follow the rules, all our die lines are going to look very similar, except for the character of the design. But it's about the dimensions, putting the border on it. It has a date, who's the client, who drew it, who owns it, what's it made out of. All of these things are very important. So let's make believe that this is a proprietary design. This 3 little panel gusset corner, let's make believe no one has ever done this before. And this is protectable. The way to do that, I mean, a lawyer would need to see the documentation of this design so they can do their searches and figure that out. And this could be the basis of a mechanical patent for something like this. Not that this is, but you never know. Sometimes you might discover something and it's unique and it can be protected. It's all about the die line. They're not necessarily going to want to see mock-ups. They don't want to see renderings. They don't want to see a sketch of it. It's all about the die line. So I just want to emphasize that. So just looking at this, it's symmetrical all around, which is quite interesting. I really like that. So I am actually just going to rotate this 45 degrees, and it's going to make it a little bit more compact because what I'm thinking about this, I'm going to be making this out of E-flute. So by doing this on a 45, if you think about the grain that we keep talking about of the fluting in the material and how I talk about the fluting material when you have a rectilinear box, it either goes with the grain or goes against it. Are folds. So when the folds go against the grain, that's actually quite a nice fold. It snaps very well, and you're pressing those little fluted tubes in there, and you're getting a really nice fold. When you fold with the grain, it's not as great a fold. It's still fine, but it can be a little weaker and kind of give a little bit because you're sort of making your fold go between the tubes, between the flutes, or with the flutes. And if it's slightly crooked, it's going to get a little wonky. So by putting this on a 45-degree angle, all of my folds now are going to go against the fluting. Yes, on a 45-degree angle, but it's in a controlled angle. It's not sort of loosey-goosey. It's like going against on a 45, which is just as good as folding on a 90-degree against the flutes. So this actually is kind of a happy accident. I didn't even think this was going to happen, but it makes it really strong. And we can see that in the mock-up. And I'll point that out again when you take a look at the tutorial of the actual setup. So I just want to review dimensioning again. This is a pretty easy dimension setup because of the simplicity of the structure. So here's the dimension page. I'll leave this up for a moment. I changed these slightly because this is a pretty big blank. So I increased the size of my type. It's a little over 3/8 of an inch. What else is different here? The arrow, I still have filled arrows and I have a nice proportion on these. So it's a nice thin, clean arrow. So I have them at a 1/2 inch by almost a 1/4 inch in width in both dimensions. I left my offset and the extension. That's about the same. And the units and display, I did a custom. I did that to 2 decimal places instead of 3. So that's what the setup is for that information. So the next thing we have to do is work on our line quality. So these are all separate lines, except for the square in the middle. That's still a surface. So I'm just going to delete that, which eliminates these lines that I have. I want these lines to be individual. I do not want the surface for a dimension die line. So I'm just going to redraw these as lines and not have that as a surface. So again, the quick check to make sure that it's all lines. I have grayscale on and I don't see any gradation. We don't need my center line for this. So back to view top. So with all the setups for that, I think we are good. Ultimately, we are going to use this last grayscale. It's a shaded full display. You can see the quality changes slightly. So this is wireframe. That's a working grayscale, and this is full shaded. I mean, we don't have shading, but the line qualities look a lot better here. So all of these internal lines, they're all independent entities. So if we select all of these, actually those center lines are probably going to go away. Okay, so if you go under inspector, attributes, down here we have lines and edges. Color is black, that's good. It's on solid, it's line weight 1. So line weight 1 will be our smallest line weight. So let's change that. Instead of solid, I'm going to use a dashed line. See -3. That looks pretty good. There's several different proportions on that. That just makes them all dotted lines. That will represent our folds. I don't use color for my die lines. We can, there's nothing wrong with that. Most of the die lines that you put art on are color coded with folds, scores, and cuts. I like to do black and white because quite often these documents are sent around and they're printed and they're just basic black and white. So I like it to communicate in a black and white fashion. So whatever format it's in, it will still work. Right, so for this, I'm going to take away these, and it's going to get even more simply looking. Then I'm thinking about this, since I do have all of my geometry straight up, I am going to dimension this the way I had it and not on the angle, because it's going to make more sense. Okay, I don't have my center anymore, so I'm going to just do this by coordinates. Okay, so now I have my 90. So this is going to be better for dimensioning. Sorry to confuse everybody. Just turning it on the angle is how it's going to relate to the fluting. So that'll be a different conversation when I actually make the part. Okay, so those are my folds. I missed these. So let's bring these back. Vector. Says solid. I think, what did we use? -3. That's good. So like I mentioned, this is a pretty simple die line. Simple is good. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so these are my outlines. I'm going to keep these solid, and here I'm going to go to line weight. So I think a lot of us had noticed when we turn this into JPEGs, when we print them out, some of these line weights don't hold up as well. So I'm going to go pretty thick on this. So here in the image, it's going to look really thick. So I did line weight 4. But I think when I turn it into a JPEG, these line weights are a little less distinctive. Okay, so that's it. So now it's just a matter of doing our dimensions. So let's see what we have. Got these arcs. that we need to do, and we need to do our overall numbers. Okay, so under dimensions, this is for horizontal and vertical. So I think what we'll do is we need to determine. So I click to these points. We have 4 inches from here. And I'm going to go, so it's a matter of just getting this to sit in the right place, which can be challenging sometimes. Oh, come on. Huh. Why isn't that holding? All right, let's edit. I'm going to snap here first and then see if this will hold better. Here we go. Okay. So little trial and error. So we have these 2 dimensions that are giving my side panel, and then the extension of that panel that comes up. So it's always a good idea to have our overall dimensions. So I'm going to put the overall dimension for this over here. So the overall width and height, and I'll get that to fit right there. And now that's on one axis, on this left to right. So we need to do the same thing up and down. So I'm going to do that over here. This. So I'm just snapping to this other dimension so that lines up nicely. So there is an aesthetic layout to dimensioning to make it look as simple and clean and clear as possible. So let's stay with this symmetrical theme. So now we want the overall down here at the bottom. I'm basically doing the same thing that I did along the side, but we'll do it down here. Okay, so now I have my overalls and I have my main panels delineated. So I think that's it for that. The symmetry is key to this structure. So I'm going to put some center lines in here just to further show that this whole thing is extremely symmetrical and have a center line. So those are just straight lines. So I'm going to give that a certain character. I'm going to leave it the thin line, go back to the inspector, and under solid, and instead of dashed, I will do, let's try center line 2. That looks pretty good. So center lines are dash dot. It's like a long dash and a short dot that says center line. I could put a little CL message on the end here, but it's going to kind of get in the way of everything. But that's a pretty clear communication of center lines. So right now we have, that's all the geometry, the 4 inches and the 8 inches. That tells us everything about that panel. So what we need to know now is just these radiuses. Like I don't necessarily need to, I could do this angle in here, which I'm going to do to show exactly how this lays out. So let's go do our angles. So we have angles and we can do, okay, let's see. Now, this is a little bit of a challenge. Quite often we start with our apex, which is the point of the triangle. I just don't know which direction. Let me try. Oh, got it. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to start with this and put that there. I know these numbers are a little bit small, so let's just zoom in here a little so we can see that. So we have that angle. So I'm going to do all 3 of these. So it'll be, I think it was apex, first leg, second leg, and then we'll make these line up. Okay, again, I don't want these to be connected. Okay, so again, apex is the center, and then one leg, it's like a leg of a triangle. And then I go to the second leg, and then we have the third angle. So now, since this is all symmetrical, I only need to do this once. I don't have to do this on every one because I have my nice center lines, and it's very apparent that this is a centered part. So that's really it on the angles. So we just need some radiuses, and we're complete. So under the radius tool here, we can do diameter or radius, and it'll automatically label that for us. And since these are real arcs, see if I hover over that and it turns red like that, then I know I can dimension that. So I clicked on it, and I can move this around and kind of put it where I want. So again, this is just a decision about where, so I'll just put that, I have plenty of room in here. I'll just put that on center. So we have that. I only need to do that once. Let's see. Where's a good place to put the other one? So I have quite a bit of space. I could put it up here. I could put it down there. So I'm just going to select up here. I have plenty of room. I'll just put that so it's nice and comfortable right there. I don't necessarily need to put all my center lines. Sometimes you can. Like I could draw the center line of this arc and where that's coming from. But all of this, since it lines up and the geometry is so clean, it's pretty simple. You don't need to get too complicated with all the center line. But there's nothing wrong with that. The more information, the better, as long as it doesn't get too confusing. So that's essentially what we need. It's the information we need to do this die line. So now, where am I going to fit this? So these are feet. So this is 24 inches high by 3. I could do something like that, so I have enough room for my title block. One way to determine how to set these up is when this gets printed full size, I would like it to fold up to about an 8.5 by 11. So it's a really comfortable fold. So if I print these and go to a meeting and it's full size, I can bring them out of a folder, and then we can take a look at the full size. So I'm going to use modules of 8.5 by 11. So let's see here. If I do, let's see, 3 times 8.5, that would bring me to 25.5. And if I do 3 times 11, that's 33. So I think that might be a good number. And I didn't just make that up because I think I have that predetermined. What am I doing? No. Display image options, and voila, 33 by 25.5. So that's the number of this frame here. So now all I have to do is draw a rectangle in that size. And let's go to wireframe until I turn off gray. So I'm just sort of guessing on what this might be. So we have length and width. So if we go up, let's go in here, backspace to 33, tab, 25.5, enter. So now I know that that's the size of my page. And when it's printed out full size and we fold it up, it'll be a nice module. So that's the size of the page. What I would like to determine is the border. So I'm going to do 2D wall. And I'm going to bring that in quite big because this is a large drawing. So let's do 0.5 and see. Yeah, that's even a little small, but that should be fine. So if I do fit, now I don't have my fit to 0. So zoom options. Let's put that to 0. And then fit. So the grid is starting to get in the way. Okay, so this fits very nice over here. It gives me a little room for a title block, and then I could add some additional drawings or notes up here at the top. So what we want to do is I am going to just trace these lines. That 2D wall is all one part. I don't necessarily want that as a part. I want these as individual lines. So I'm just drawing 2 rectangles to give us those lines that I want, and I'm going to delete the 2D wall. It might be a little confusing. I don't want these as gradated surfaces. So I'm going to select these because right now, if I go to my grayscale, they're gray. They're reading as surfaces. So if we go into Inspector and we go into our attributes, down here, we can control things, cast shadows, receive shadows, renders as shaded surface, turn that off. So now they're just going to look like lines. And what that allows me to do is take this inside line and I want to make that a very thick line. Again, I'm going to go really thick here. It's going to look a little bit too much, but when we do save it out as a JPEG, these line weights do reduce quite a bit. Okay, so we're almost there. So there it is. I have a nice border. It looks very technical. I have my center lines and all my folds, and things look nice. So the one thing we should add to this, and it's very important, you can use Note. And by clicking over here, I can add text. This is where I will put all the information for the title block. This can vary quite a bit. This is actually a client of mine, Chatham Imports, where I did the farmer's bottle. I did it for them, which was actually just came out on shelf, I don't know, about a month and a half ago. So I'm just going to use this information for that. So for our purposes, in class, we can make up all this information. Farmers gin, BTC, box. So that's the project. And then, oops, we'll do caps. Part. What did I call this? Base box. Base box. Base box die line. Material. I'm just going to call it E-flute for now. I could call out, double-sided printing or litho mount or whatever we're going to do. But for now, we could just do E-flute. Scale. I usually just stay with full because it is full size. And when we print this document, it will be full size. Quite often we do print these smaller. I might print this out just for a quick meeting on 11/17. I'm not going to change that scale. I will communicate that during the meeting because the actual PDF or a DXF file of this will be full size. So I'm going to stay with full scale. We don't have to get involved trying to figure out if I print this on 8.5 by 11, what is the scale? We can keep that full. I quite often put the date right here because there's room. And any other information I usually just add. On by, that's me. And so that's kind of a simple thing we can use. So now this is actually an entity here. So I can select that and we move it around with the move tool. Okay. Give it a little bit of room. And it's actually part of the border. It's part of the border language. So it's going to add, lock this down here. Select that line. Inspector, line weight, I believe I used 5 or 6, can't remember what it was. So that's it. So fit, we have that. So we have a nice amount of room here. So I'm actually going to take in some of the grayscale images that I created of the opening and the closing of this and put that up in here to illustrate what this is about. This is only one part of the project because there is the other die line, which was the cover, which I have not fully detailed here. Um, oh, did I just draw on this? Oh, kidding me. All right. Hmm. Okay, well, you can see the other die line. I just drew on top of this other die line. So I have this die line of the box structure. This will become more apparent when we look at it in the when I cut out the actual sample. So that's just a tube structure with an insert that holds the top. So the reason this is on top of one another is because I didn't eliminate that layer when I was working on this. So that's, or maybe I can get rid of that. Hold on. There we go. Sorry about that. So this is the die line. So this actually, the surface, I didn't make the die line first. I wanted to make the base sample so I could measure the exact width because I have all those rolled corners. And that kind of makes it a little bit bigger than actually just the dimensions. So I actually think that this width of this panel is a quarter of an inch wider than the actual measurement of the insert. So it gives me an eighth per side, which allows this to fit around that structure snugly, but not too snug that you can't get it off. So that's a little bit of a tolerance issue. So that was the start of this. And the rest of this was pretty straightforward. I maintained the same arcs at the bottom. I have the tuck flap at the top, and I have my dust covers coming in, and then I have the insert flap with the hole in it to hold that into position. Okay, so that's creating the die line. So I would save that when these are completely dimensioned, save that out as JPEG. And if you do it in this grayscale here, for the die line with the dimensions, it should hold the line weights nicely. So I have this on a couple of layers. Huh. All right, not sure what I did here. See, I didn't keep track of my layers. All right, so the rest of it is on another layer here somewhere, so it should save out nicely. Okay, so that's it for developing the dimension die line for this structure.